Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Spiro, new Yosei Teikoku song. Also, they are crowdfunding a limited edition physical release of Stigma Recast, which is pretty exciting. So this is brand new stuff, I'm assuming. I think most of the Yousei that I've heard recently, stuff that's been recently released, is part of that recast album where they've been taking their older tracks and bumping them up to not necessarily modern standards, but to the skill level that they have now with the types of instruments and sounds that they currently use. And it's been really interesting to check out some of those recast reimaginings, I guess we could call them. It's pretty rare for a band to cover their own music in such a different kind of way that, you know, someone else, we might call it an arrangement, but when you do it yourself, I guess someone can rearrange their own music. It's just a bit of an unusual thing that is happening more and more recently. So, I don't know, we need a proper term for that, and I guess reimagining is that. Anyways, I suppose this is a brand new song, not something reimagined. Let's dive into this. See what's going on with Hades, the Resurrection. Ooh, that one's a little faster. So many panicky textures on the outskirts. The strings are a nice addition in the background. That is a wild section. Super fast hi-hat work. Also, really wild textures in the back. I can't anticipate when that shows up. I would love to count that out. Ooh. Super aggressive. Yeah.
凍りついたら真の闇を覗けるからは潰されても這い上がれ熱き御霊を授けよう怒りののろしを上げて死者に響け地獄の果てへ絶望をつかむ者がやがて真実を作る深く落ちてゆけ運命すら届かぬ場所へ絶え間なく叫ぶ怒り好みが朽ち果てようと闇を食らい進むなら終わりさえも始まりになる恐れさえも飲み込んで極みを飛び越えてゆけ俺が翼広げたら蘇る闇を先舞い上がれ魂を捨てる者よ星みたいな旋律を突き出す歌声が空気つばさりからに夜の灯りが臨場から
Okay, I think that is 4/4. I think it has a slight tempo increase. There we go. Lots of silence at the end of that, at least on Deezer. Not sure about the album version. But that's 4 groups of 3 and a group of 4. Add all that together, you get 16. That's divisible by 4. And so we're still in 4/4 there, but I do think that there's a slight tempo increase at the beginning of it that kind of bumps it up a little bit above where we were. And then when we wind up wherever, I guess the verse always comes after that, except for the ending there. And then we bring the tempo back down. I'm talking like 5 to 10 BPM, maybe not even 10. It's subtle enough that you can feel it. It feels like it's more frantic than the rest of the track. But that 3-3-3-3-4 shows up a lot in this song. The guitars love to focus on that rhythmic cadence. Gives us 5 sections of each phrase or each riff. The drums like to lean into that at times as well, and this is usually contrasted pretty heavily with a straightforward 4/4 with a snare on 2 and 4, as can be heard in the chorus. Usually quite a bit of syncopation around that too, usually with the bass kick and the bass guitar, so that it doesn't feel completely rigid. It's got a danceability to it or a bouncing element to it, but it does stand in contrast pretty well against the 3-3-3-3-4 idea that is present in a lot of the rest of the track. All right, yeah, interesting track though. It's pretty much what I expect from them. It's a little core adjacent, metalcore definitely. Very textured, not a lot of memorable riffs in here. A lot of the guitar work tends to be atmospheric. It's the timbre of the guitar tone mixed with cool chords that create the heavy vibe overall, rather than being riff focused like a lot of more traditional metal is, where you'd be able to hum some of the guitar parts. Most of the memorability here comes from atmosphere and vocal melody, which is incredibly catchy. Particularly in the chorus, which stands apart from the rest as it dips away from a general metal sound and leans a little closer to the Royal Road progression, at least harmonically, which if you listen to this and you thought, wow, that part kind of sounds like an anime opening, that's why. The Royal Road progression is a chord progression used quite a bit in Japanese rock music. Western music used it in pop music for a while in the 70s and 80s, but it's kind of gone out of vogue in the West while it's still quite popular in Japan. And it gives it that feeling of a slight bit of, there's a lot of positivity in it, but there's a slight bit of, a little bit of sorrow, I guess. To me, I've always felt a sense of what would it be, like a wistfulness, a wanting of the past, but a hopefulness of the future kind of idea. And that shows up there. And it's also what gives it its generally poppy vibes as well. If you found the chorus to be quite bouncier, that's why the guitar tone also gets cranked down a little bit. It's nowhere near as edgy. So we have a sonic change, we have a harmonic change, and a rhythmic change. And that's certainly going to give it a very different feel from the rest of the track. What was interesting was that I've heard this switch up quite a bit. And for whatever reason, it wasn't until when I say quite a bit, I mean like in Japanese music in general, that's heavier but has softer choruses to it. And for whatever reason, it wasn't until today that it clicked with me. I was like, oh snap, this is like Western alternative metal or melodic metalcore where the chorus is super poppy. The big difference is that the choruses tend to feel a bit more pop metal or even pop rock over here in the West because that's just, it moves towards a Western pop sound, whereas a track like this shifts the chorus into a Japanese pop sound. But it's basically the same exact thing, taking familiar elements in more popular, palatable music and applying them to this metal sphere. It's just a different regional idea of what is poppy and palatable. So that's pretty cool. What else is going on in this track? There's an interesting production to all of this. I find the drums not to be as punchy as I would expect. Part of this is that I listened to a lot of metal in this area, I suppose you could call it. Alternative metal tends to be more textured and rhythmic. Metalcore is more textured and rhythmic. And I'm used to the vibes of the drum being punchier. I think the bass kick has a nice thud to it, but it ultimately feels kind of quiet. And the snare does not have a loud crack to it at all. It's quite muted in this track. It's really the cymbals that stand out the most in this song. They are very bright and present within the mix. And this feels a bit inverted to me. It's just a little muffled, I think, overall. The guitars, I can make out what they're playing generally, but there's also a lot of sections where I really only get the texture, something closer to, I don't know if this analogy is going to make sense to everybody, but something closer to shoegaze, where I can feel, or I can hear what's being played technically within, non-technically within the atmosphere, but I have kind of a hard time hearing the individual notes. And I think part of that is the production. Again, it's sort of muffled. This is really bizarre to me because this is a 2026 metalcore track, and right now the cool hip thing in metal, well, in more palatable metals, is readability of music. It's presence of instruments. A lot of people are talking about how the production in popular metals these days, especially the gatekeepery, only true metalheads, find it to be too clean or too poppy, or the aesthetic just isn't metal, it's not raw enough. These are sentiments that I've heard on the internet in specific circles. And this track feels like it's still capturing some of that raw, less defined, less high fidelity production that I associate with older metal, not so much with modern metal. The vocals are very clear in the mix, though. They are the instrument that no matter what else is going on, I can make them out. Well, at least the main vocals. The gang vocals that show up in the chorus are pushed out to the side and once again, just kind of quiet. The vocals, I think, are just way too high up in the mix. They could be brought down. The instruments need a little bit more space in them to open it up. But this is all subjective too. Some people are going to listen to this and absolutely love the way that everything is balanced. I just find it to be too much of a cluttered mess at times. I have a small affinity for this hyper compressed, everything just kind of feels like it's coming from the same place sound, as I did grow up in the 2000s post-hardcore scene, which had low to mid-fi production overall. Just lots of bass heavy tracks from back then that had a muddy sound overall. But I don't know, my sensibilities these days, I tend to aim for clarity in what I enjoy in music, and this is lacking clarity in a lot of ways. But I'm also trying to compare this to other Yosei Teikoku tracks, and I don't remember them being like this. So I don't know if this is something that they're trying to capture an older sound. I don't know if this is something particular to this track, but I could have sworn when we listened to some of the recast songs in the last 6 months, give or take. I think we've done two of them. One was a special selection and one was on live stream, if I remember correctly. I remember there being more clarity in the mix. So, like I said, I find that interesting and unexpected for this track. The rest of the song, though, looking at the melodic side, it is catchy, it is energetic, it is electrifying. The vocals are just constantly pushing forward. There's a speed and a rhythm to them, a brightness to the tone, a positivity to the melodic movement. This contrasts pretty heavily with the guitar work, which tends to be heavy and moody, at least outside of the chorus. And I think if you compare the vocals to the guitar solo, you can find one of the largest separations between emotional and tension within this track, where the guitar solo is just very antagonistic. It's dark, it's eerie, there's a dangerous element to it. It's certainly leaning into an aggression that I don't really hear in the vocal melody or the vocal production, which tends to, as I mentioned, have a brighter, positive outlook on the music and keeps it feeling light and bouncy compared to some of the darker sounds coming into the guitar work, whether it is the solo or the atmospheric playing. And I think that this too kind of butts up against the chorus, where the guitars are brighter. They're a bit thinner, they don't take as much space. They just have a more palatable sound in general, but also the chords being played are more upbeat that match the vocals a fair bit more. So there is this constant back and forth of whether this track is aiming to be fun and bouncy or heavy and dark and aggressive. And I don't know what to read into that other than maybe that's just the way music sounds. I mean, even if we look at Western alternative metal, that tends to fit into these styles as well. And it's usually not for a thematic reason. It's just you got to have your heavy metal sections, and then you need your palatable clean sections for the memorability, for the hooks, for the catchiness. And that's just how a lot of popular metal is made these days. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if the lyrics lean into this schism in any way, if we're looking at some sort of duality within the lyrical themes or not. But I'm not going to be expecting it. I really think it's just the kind of music they want to create. I guess the last thing to bring up would be the textures on the outskirts, because the drums are pretty consistent throughout. Lots of drive, lots of momentum. The vocals are catchy and poppy. The guitars, they have their two modes, but there's still so much else to this track. The entire second verse was kind of electronic texture, as we just had like the bass kick, I think, something pretty straightforward on the drums, a lot of empty space, and then just these walls of electronic sounds. And these continue to persist throughout the track. I think that this was just the place where you could hear them most clearly. We have some panic chord stuff that's going on the outside. It's like a panic chord slide where you get that really tense chord and then the pitches both drop simultaneously. We had that in the opening, maybe the first verse too. And then all these swirly sounds going on. It definitely creates something that feels a bit amorphous, maybe even otherworldly or alien possibly. And it ties into the overall negative feeling within the track, the animosity, the aggression, the darkness, really well, as it transports me to a place that is not friendly to me, but also unfamiliar. Sort of like driving in the dark in a place you've never driven before, or walking around at night in a city you've never been. And so you lack the familiarity of the daytime, but you also have, the things that can kind of crop up on your periphery too. That's just adding to the tension and anxiety of the situation. So I think that works really well to create an unfamiliar danger lurking in the darkness, in the song. And I think it's important that these types of textures don't show up in the chorus as the guitars move towards something brighter or more palatable. I don't even remember if there is synth work, but if there is, it's focusing again with the guitars as something a little more positive there too, and more familiar. So that high contrast element is present in every instrument. But I do think that this track does a good job of kind of balancing everything, the electronic side, the metal side, the poppier side. We got that cool guitar solo in here. We've got the vocals. It's just high energy. It's 5 minutes. Just high octane movement forward. Let's check out some lyrics for this and we'll see what's going on there. Lyrically, this is very cool. Part of it is an anthem that even in your darkest moments, you can be better, push through them and see a brighter future. But it's also done through the trite. Well, it's less trite here, but it's still fairly cliched of metal and Satan worship. The beginning of this song seems to be a pretty direct concept of a ritual to raise Satan, or in this case described as Hades, maybe not necessarily the Christian Satan, but some sort of ruler of the underworld. In fact, the chorus says, "Tear through the darkness and soar, O ruler of souls." Tells them to transform their black wings. The veil of night trembles sharply over your body. So a lot of verse 1 seems to be about this idea of setting up this area for this ritual to happen. You're summoning ghosts that bloom in the darkness. You're making a contract with a forbidden oath. And then you sing a song. It's a bell of the covenant of the remembrance of the spirits. And this leads us indirectly into the chorus where, tear through the darkness, O ruler of souls. It's like we have a lot of this satanic imagery right here at the start. But what I love is how it's transformed instead of, praising Satan kind of thing. It's, by the middle part of this track, it talks about how people have darkness in their life. But no matter what, they push forward. It says, even in these bleak days and the difficulties of life, everyone still moves forward. Tomorrow, we can laugh together. And as fragile as this is, as our lives are, the support of our friends is precious. Show your will to be reborn and raise the flag of loyalty. No one cares about anyone but themselves these days, but we can change that. And by the repeated pre-chorus at the end of the track, the pre-chorus is the part where the main vocalist sings something and then we have the rise, and then they sing something, rage. We got those background gang vocals. We only heard this one time through for the first 2 choruses, but at the end of the track, there's 5 stanzas of this before we hit that final chorus. And this whole section here is sort of bringing these 2 ideas together. The empowerment of a demon to produce these wings and have control over souls, having this power, and the people who have darkness within their lives and just try to push forward, finding a brighter future. By the end of this track, it says, swallow fear and become this beast that has these broken wings. Have this power, reignite that flame within yourself, taking the imagery of the underworld, of flames and stuff, and turning that into a candle within, a light, a flame of your own desires. It is finding the midpoint here, and it doesn't say praise Satan, it doesn't say be a follower of Hades. It says be your own Hades. Be your own person who fights back, who stands up and says, I'll be here tomorrow, even though I've been kicked down. There's darkness today, but be the light for tomorrow. Be your own light for tomorrow. I think that's pretty cool. And I'm a real big fan of this kind of messaging here. But yeah, that's how this song goes. I think it's pretty cool. Part of this repeating pre-chorus at the end, even if crushed, crawl back up. I shall bestow upon you a burning spirit. Rise the beacon of anger and resonate to the dead, to the ends of hell, because he who grasps despair, eventually the truth will be created. You fall deeper and deeper into hell, but the pain that cries out ceaselessly doesn't exist if this body crumbles away. If you devour the darkness in advance, even the end becomes a beginning. So swallow your fear and leap beyond the limit. Spread your broken wings, revive Hades. It's also really interesting to see this pre-chorus, which was originally a build-up into the bouncy chorus, sort of a short idea to help hyper-contrast into something even brighter and poppier, be something that we stick with for so long. I can't think of too many songs where a pre-chorus sort of becomes its own section. Yeah, I really dig what's going on here. It's quite unique, but unique in execution and in theme, but it ends up working really well. I also noticed when I was looking for lyrics for this, because I couldn't find any, this is all machine translated, so it's possible some of this stuff is not directly translated well, and maybe there's some stuff lost in translation. But the rise, rage, and the end, that shouted gang vocals at the end of each of the lines in the pre-chorus, is actually part of this Hades saga. This is, I haven't done extensive research, but I did see other titles in their discography called Hades the Rage, Hades the Rise, and Hades the End. And now we have Hades the Resurrection. So incorporating those old titles into this song's pretty cool. And I wonder if they reuse some lines, maybe musical lines, maybe lyrical lines, if there's any sort of connection between this track and some of those that I missed because I've never heard those 3 tracks. But I do think it's cool that at the very least they are referenced. All right, that's going to wrap it up. These are my thoughts on Yosei Teikoku's Hades, the Resurrection. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this? Let me know. Put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to, into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up. I already said that. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.